Welcome to the Australian Business Executive Podcast, where we speak with Australia's most influential industry professionals on the business and economic development issues taking place across the country. You can stay up to date with all our content, including our magazines, podcasts and videos by visiting www.theabe.com.au and clicking on subscribe.
Today's guest is Protector Building Systems Managing Director Robert Glasgow. Robert is a mechanical engineer that began working in remote locations such as the Bowen Basin, performing mechanical maintenance shutdowns on large mining equipment, and now finds himself in the heart of Sydney with a young family and working on some of the nation's largest infrastructure projects for the country's largest organizations. Robert, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, g'day, thanks. Thanks, Jesse. Glad to be here.
Very good. So give us an overview of Protector Building Systems.
Yeah, look, we're a specialist team of engineers, site management and supervision that look after the design and construction of acoustic sheds on our tunnelling infrastructure projects. So we've got a head office in Sydney, and we also run a satellite office out of Melbourne when we have major projects running down there. So as these two cities are the main focus of tunnel infrastructure for Australia, that's really where we focus our energy.
People like myself would be unaware of what acoustic building systems really are. Do you want to just give us an overview for people who might not have come across it?
Yeah, no worries. Look, largely our buildings provide the opportunity for the tunnelling companies to work on a 24/7 basis without interruption from uncontrollable events like weather. And also make sure that they, with the commercial and private residents that live nearby, that they're unaffected as much as possible. The design intent of what we specifically do is reduce the amount of noise generated inside the building from leaving the building and making their way to those close receptors. So the allowable amount of noise leaving the work site is typically just above a standard working or a standard day.
Fair enough. Okay. And so I assume you'd be working with fairly large clients then if we're talking infrastructure.
Yeah, that's correct. So our clients are generally a joint venture of tier one companies like John Holland, CPB, Lendlease, those sort of companies. And I guess the benefit of working with those companies is that the work sites generally are well managed and maintained. And this allows us to work to our strengths and really focus on providing the professional product that we endeavour to do.
Okay. So tell us about some of the projects that you've been involved in. Where would we see your work?
Yeah, look, I mean, the main project we've been involved with has to be the Sydney Metro project. From a design concept through bidding and execution, and even including the users of the Metro rail system here in Sydney. This has been the flagship project for Protector Building Systems, and I would say the government and the greater population of Sydney as well. And also credit where credit's due, and this has to go to the government we have in place at the moment in getting this project underway, but also in the way that they've distributed and managed the contract packages. This has really helped, I think, the tier one joint ventures and ourselves in providing the works that we do. So look, we had some fairly amazing experiences on that project from a design and installation perspective. We did one building at Pitt Street, on the corner of Pitt Street and Castlereagh Street. So with that building, our columns on the building went through 4 levels of a concrete basement car park, and then the cladding was all above ground to a roof height of about 18 metres above street level. And so that's arguably one of Sydney's busiest locations. So as you can imagine, that had some challenges just facing that site alone. And the other sort of flagship building for us was when we placed a building on Hickson Road in Barangaroo between 2 bridges. And then once we constructed the building was actually that finished higher than those 2 bridges. So an image of this building has the Sydney Harbour Bridge in the background, and this is an iconic picture for us here at Protector Building Systems. Just gives us a lot of feedback from the work that we've done for the city. The next The next project that had some reasonable challenges but was memorable for me due to the benefits it obtained was the early works portion of the Metro Tunnel project in Melbourne. The main advantage for this one for me was the head start that it gave to the main project due to the site establishment being completed and allowing the main tunnelling contractor focus on the main task of tunnelling itself. The two sites we were involved with there had us place acoustic sheds both onto the actual streets of Melbourne instead of a resumed block of land or building. So this was interesting to say the least, and we're certainly glad to be a part of that. And we also really got to enjoy a high level of acoustic treatment on these two buildings, which is what we really enjoy doing.
Okay. So are there any, misconceptions around the industry or acoustic buildings that you tend to deal with?
Yeah, look, I think that the main item that some people think is that it's a one-size-fits-all package for both the structure and the acoustic treatment. However, it's usually quite the opposite. As I briefly touched on just before, with the two buildings in Sydney, every project, therefore every building is completely unique. So every design and acoustic treatment is typically bespoke. So the other item is that with everything, there's a design intent, which is largely to reduce the amount of construction noise exiting the worksite. So some of the general public have expected that the buildings will completely remove all the noise exiting the site, which would be an amazing acoustic treatment, but unfortunately not quite what we do.
So, Robert, we're at the end of our conversation today. Before we finish, is there anything that you'd like to address or make note of?
Yeah, look, thanks. The one thing I'd really like to promote and assist is the growth of our industry wherever I can. And I think projects that we are involved with can really help that out. So, and that's manufacturing locally in Australia. So from a national point of view, I'd really like to see the government prioritise or subsidise the use of local and Australian-made products over imported products from offshore for the Tier 1 joint venture contracted for the works. With a nation that's sort of arguably in a decline of local fabrication and manufacturing, I think the government's in the right position to be able to do this and let the industry prosper once again. From a state point of view, this could go one step further with the priority or subsidy being for the local and regional suppliers from that state. So I'm not exactly sure how this would be implemented or if it's possible, but I think that it's one thing where the government, or one item where the government could really probably assist the growth of manufacturing in the country again.
Well, Robert, thanks very much for your time today.
No, thank you, Jesse.
This has been a production of the Australian Business Executive, a division of Romulus Rising Proprietary Limited. All rights reserved. You can stay up to date with the Australian Business Executive, including our magazines, podcasts and videos by visiting www.theabe.com.au and clicking on subscribe.